Co-hosting all morning from Fox News, it's Kat Timpf. And Kat, I just want to know, you're going to bring on your guest,
yes,
a combat veteran of Afghanistan. I want to know, have you ever interviewed this person before?
No. I do talk to this person often because it's my husband. So I mean, I would say we speak. I think it'd be strange if I just interviewed him at home. But I've learned a lot, even though, I've been in politics and media. I've learned a lot of things that I didn't know because I've never been to Afghanistan, but he has. And I'm looking forward to getting everyone to listen to his perspective. Cam, you there, buddy?
I am. You have interviewed me before, though. I've been on your show.
Well, you did Sincerely, Kat, but that wasn't really an interview of you.
Okay, that's true.
Yeah, right? Okay. Doing great already. So, listen, you were there in 2012, which you said was sort of the end of when the mission was really a combat mission. So you said something to me that was very interesting about the Marines who, unfortunately were killed yesterday. Can you sort of explain that for everyone?
Yeah, so I don't know, Kat, just a little background, too, on myself. I'm a West Point graduate. I was in the 101st Airborne there, and I was stationed in a place called Coast, Afghanistan. So if Afghanistan was a sock, if you're thinking about it, was towards the heel of it. This area is kind of near Miram Shah, where the Haqqani network, so the number 2 of the Taliban is from the Haqqani network, a labeled terrorist organization, kind of, obviously well known, and right near Pakistan, right to the border. It was one of the closest bases there. So we saw combat throughout, my time there. But, I was one of the last combat deployments in there before we started the retrograde of kind of breaking stuff down. So, again, this has been, 6 years of, getting out of Afghanistan to that. But, so that just with that kind of context of actually kind of the fighting going forward, as I was talking to Kat yesterday, one of the first things that I thought of when you see this many casualties is, and not to shame them, but, for this point, we've had a lot of soldiers that, you'll have E6s, E7s. So these are guys who are team leaders, or sergeants or part of squads. So there may be 8 to 10 people or guys below that, but they've never been deployed. They've never seen combat. We have tons of veterans before that time who've seen a lot of combat. 6 combat tours are guys I went with, over there. Now you have a lot of the Army and a lot of young guys who have never actually been in the front lines. So yesterday when you see 13 people go down, in my mind, I'm saying these guys aren't trained. And so doing a combat checkpoint and stuff like that, this is a basic 101 task. Like I could send out my privates or, specialists. This is stuff we know how to screen someone, which is basically you're setting up a checkpoint where you're screening them, passing them through, checking for them. You have a guy pulling security on them for anything going on. And this is a basic task we would do all the time. This is 101 stuff. It's like walking, chewing gum. So when you see this and what's happening there, you either have these guys aren't trained or they don't have the proper standoff or equipment to do this. Now, obviously, in the hasty aspect there, you could deal with terrain, and the enemy has a boat within the area they're operating by this airfield. We can get into that later, taking Bagram, et cetera. But most likely, they're saying the young guys who died over there are probably, 18 to 22-year-old kids who've never been deployed before. And, I don't believe they got the proper train up. They're thrown on a boat for a failure of leadership within this country to make amends to a mistake the way we did this. And they weren't trained how to clear people and push them through. And they probably were clustered up into one area, and that's why we saw so many casualties.
Right, and as you said, you don't want to blame them, and you don't blame them. And there's a saying that I've started hearing as I've talked to most veterans about this, saying it's not the boots, it's the suits that have sort of screwed this whole thing up.
Yeah, and it's just a shame. I mean, put them through. And, the other thing, too, is the day before this, and no one is ever talking about it, but you had an attack the day before where you heard some shots fired. And typically we'd call it like a probing attack. So meaning these guys were testing the bounds of what our reaction would be, where people went. Did they run to choke points? They were setting up the operation for the next day so that they get the most, casualties or, effect on their target they wanted to do. We kind of knew that was going on. And, you put people in a bad situation when you put them on when we were trying to get out of the civilian airfield instead of Bagram. The other thing I wanted to touch on, too, is that, no one brought this up, but and sorry, I don't want to go on too much of a rant, Kat, but obviously this stuff bothers me. But do we have the proper medical assets on the ground there? I mean, so when you think about triage and everything, when you're in the military, there are only a few bases when I was over there in Afghanistan that could provide the proper medical care for a mass casualty event, and that's like over 3 or 4 people getting that, and obviously these are severe wounds. Most of these guys probably had to get flown out to Germany. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we had a tent. How many surgeons were on the ground? No one's asking these questions. I mean, that's partially why they maybe never went outside the wire. We did this hasty thing to get on an airstrip without any facilities. You're keeping people there. And, I think it's a little bit of a duty of the United States and the military to plan to give people the proper aid when you're putting people out there. But I just wanted to finish one last thing, Kat, on these young guys. I mean, I think, these guys come over here, these young kids that have never been to combat, and you have leaders who don't understand, and they're put into this mission, and it's almost as, you're going to a war zone. Make no mistake about it. This is forever been a fight. And these people come in and it almost seem like this is some, foreign aid mission where they're helping people on there. But make no mistake, you're in there. And, there's pictures of these Marines and, soldiers standing, side to side with the Taliban. And I know when I was over there and we get in a firefight, see them, he's asking, did you ever see these guys? And you wouldn't. They're like ghosts. You would never see the whites of their eyes. And they were literally sitting there. The only time you'd see it if you killed them. But they were right next to them. So you get this mistaken guys that things are going to be okay, and you become complacent. And it's not their fault. It's just they're put in a bad situation. And then when you become complacent, you're going on and people bunch up, and then this is what happens. And again, it's a failure of senior leadership from the generals into the civilians in charge of this.
Yeah, and something else you talked to me about was the generals that, they have been saying for years and years that you're making progress and things are going great. And, the Afghan army is really getting it. And you said that when you were out there, you obviously had a lot less intel than these top generals. And you immediately realized, oh, well, this is not going to work. This is not happening.
Well, in many ways, the people with the most intel were the people on the ground. It's those 03s, right, the captains and below and lieutenants, and the enlisted soldiers, from privates to E7s, or sergeants who run there. Those are the guys who dealt with people, the ones who trained them. And I know back in 2012 that a lot of these guys can't read. I mean, they don't know what colors. And for us to think that we can put a Western, army and military force and instill that in them, it just doesn't work with the way they live. Like, the equipment we use is highly sophisticated. You need a base level of education and logistics, finance, and just overall know-how and training. And that this is just not sustainable for them. So it makes you think, why did we do this? And, for 20 years, you have the military from the generals, and I truly blame a lot of this on them. It really comes from a weak and ridiculous promotion system where we promote yes men. If you look at, there are papers on there going back to Afghanistan. The people that complained or ever said anything were no longer senior people in the military. You get promoted. It goes to become a general. I would say you took the line between a gray area. It's a politician and a soldier, because the way you continue to move up, you're approved by the President of the United States as for 3 or 4 stars. We have Senate and Congress, and those are the people there. So they are constantly saying yes and telling the politicians what they want to hear. But also at the end of the day, a lot of these guys just don't have the backbone to say, no, or this doesn't make sense. It's them running their head into the wall. And because at the end of the day, they either get a nice cushy job in Washington and they forget what it's like, and people become, numbers to them, or they're on a board seat. And we've allowed to happen because for a while.
Cam.
It's sad.
Yeah. Cam, and we have your husband on the line.
Sure do.
Cameron, you served in combat in Afghanistan. So, number one, thank you, which for me is not an empty thing, because every time I think about military people, I always go, man, you, meaning me, boy, you suck. You are not really, you're not helping anything anywhere, and people like you are. So we have very little time here, unfortunately, but I want to ask you something specifically about what happened yesterday. And that is this: the way that the path to the airport and to wait in line and to get into the airport, the way that was set up, did that itself make it easier for this attack to happen?
Oh, absolutely. I think, I was I was talking to my, I was talking to Kat about this, that, I was saying this a week before when I knew what happened when they shot. So the key decision point of where the failure was when they shut Bagram down. So for people who know, Bagram is the main base people fly into the country. They have 2 airstrips here. You have one airstrip at the Hamid Karzai airport there. So, and it's a commercial civilian airport. So it's a little bit different. At Bagram, you had a secure military base. Here you're sitting within a city. So I think about terrain. Bagram, very spread out, open fields. You create this thing called standoff. Standoff allows for, I was talking before, where people mass together. When you mass together for a suicide bomber, that is exactly what you want, because you're going to create more casualties. When you have standoff and you're able to search people with a distance, they're going to get less effect on the target if they're going to do something as people are spread out. Where they were in these small choke points in there, when you have people mass rushing the gate and without that limited standoff and having proper barriers to search people, et cetera, you basically set these people up for failure. And it's a failure of, again, as I was saying before, of leadership to do that. So, yeah, I mean, it literally does contribute to what happened yesterday. And sadly, I don't know if we've had our worst day yet.
Oh, no. Cameron, thank you so much. You've been very generous. And what I want is for you to be back at some point with Kat, both of you to come back so that we can talk more about what's going on over there. But thank you so much. And Kat, do you have any errands for him to run for you or anything like that?
Thanks, Cam. I'll see you tonight. Make sure the gate stays up so the dog doesn't eat the cat's food, please.
All right, will do.
All right. Thank you, sir.